Oh, John, I have something I have to confess. I accidentally hurt my wife's feelings with just one word.
Oh no. Should I ask? What was the word?
Okay, well, let me just. She asked me how dinner was last night, and I told her dinner was fine.
Sean. Fine is never fine.
I know that. Listen, she reacted like I threw my plate on the ground and stormed out of the room. She didn't talk to me the rest of the night. I just meant it was fine.
Well, you use the one word that the brain interprets as something is definitely wrong here, and it's anything but fine.
Oh, so you're saying it's the word's fault?
No, it's your fault for choosing the world's most passive aggressive syllable.
Fine.
Let's start the show.
John's got the facts and the science to share. Sean's got the questions flying everywhere. Two minds colliding in a curious zone. A podcast journey through the brain you own. John teaches Sean about his brain. It's weird, it's wild, it's hard to explain. Neurons fire and the jokes remain. John teaches Sean about his brain.
Hey everyone, welcome back to John Teaches Sean About His Brain, the show where John and I discuss current events, new research findings, basically all things science, and how our brains deal with it all. Today's episode is all about words, the ones we say out loud, the ones we think quietly, and the ones that accidentally cause way more chaos than we ever intended. We're digging into how language shapes the way we see the world around us, how it influences the way other people see us, and why a single phrase can shift an entire conversation, a relationship, or even a culture. Because whether we realize it or not, our words aren't just sounds, they're signals. They're tiny little brain programming codes that can calm, inspire, confuse, or completely derail whoever hears them, including ourselves. So today, John is going to help me understand why certain words hit harder than others, how language frames reality, and how we can use that power a little more intentionally, or at least stop accidentally setting things on fire during business meetings. Let's get into it. Hi, John. It's good to see you.
Good seeing you.
Okay, so
I like
words.
the intro
Oh,
because I
thank
like
you.
this topic.
Oh, listen, the Hendrickson House motto is words matter.
They
And I think
do.
I've brought this up on the podcast before, but well, obsessed is maybe the wrong word, but I'm really fascinated by words, what they mean to people, where they came from, how they're just constantly evolving, right? So
Yeah.
let's start at the beginning, right? And why do I love words so much? But well, give me your thoughts first about just words in general, language.
Yeah, I mean I agree with you. I love the idea of words and I do believe that words matter. It's really important what you say, how you say it is important too,
Mm,
but the words really matter. And I think that some people argue that it's what separates humans from non-human animals, because non-humans like our closest relatives, the chimps, have can learn up to 200 to 300 words and independent words and symbols to describe things, and can come up with kind of new and novel ways to use those, which is really fascinating. So it's rudimentary, but it's a form of language, and it's been tested with like sign language and things like that.
mhm.
But the average human knows more than 200 and 300 words. They're like between 20,000 and 30,000 words. So it's just this huge gap between humans and non-humans when it comes to language. And that's what, in my mind, that's what allows for consciousness and our narrative story arc, and bringing meaning and structure to chaos. All of those things I think relates back to words, to the word, the spoken
So
word.
let's go back to chimps though, because I want to understand this a little bit better. So I'm trying to suss out in my own brain, like there's communicating, right? I mean, there are animals in the universe that communicate
Yep.
through different means, but that's not what we're talking about. So then we get to chimps, like they can learn, let's just stick with sign language, they can learn 300 words, let's say. So if I show them a banana, they know it's called a banana. I'm on track so
Yep.
far.
You're on track.
Okay. So they have the ability to use words, identify objects,
Mhm.
but what's missing, and there's several things missing, but it feels like it's not context. But you see where I'm like,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
missing there?
So what's missing? So if you say that a chimpanzee can give signs and give the correct signs for objects,
Hmm.
then that could be, an argument could be, well, that's just like classical conditioning, where you learn that two things go together and you get rewarded for pairing the right sign with the right object, then you get a treat. So that's classical conditioning, and that's not language.
Right.
And so you have to find ways to test if they can give these signs without trying to pair objects. So then if they ask for a banana, and then you say, oh, you want, you sign back, you want a banana, and then you give them options of 4 things to choose from, they choose the banana, then like, okay, that's what they had on their mind. Another
Right.
part of language is it's generative, meaning you create a new word to mean something, because a word is like a label to represent something. So you have this representation. So there's been examples where, like the chimpanzee Washoe that the gardeners were training, who I studied under Alan and Beatrix Gardner. And
Hmm.
so I got to see some of this, and we discussed it in classes. I saw videos of different things. I visited their ranch where they were housed. But they had Washoe out for a walk and had never taught Washoe the sign for a swan out on the lake. And so Washoe knew bird
Okay.
and, some of those things.
Hmm.
And so they stopped and pointed to it and in sign language asked Washoe, what is that? What's that thing? And Washoe looked at it for a little bit and then signed waterbird, which was a unique unique combination that Washoe never used before. So then, well, that looks like it's generative. And then another trait of languages is that they're passed down. So some of the research was there were young chimps that, like, a second part of this experiment was when the chimps were moved away from the gardeners to one of their former students, that took them in Washington, Eastern Washington. Fouts, I believe, was his name. And
At Central, at what school?
Central, maybe it's
Central
Central
Washington.
Washington, I
Yeah,
think.
I think because I went to Central Washington, but I remember there was I wasn't very interested in it then. But they had I just remember they had like a part of the campus that was dedicated to this,
Yes,
to
they had the
chimps and sign.
enclosure.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes. So that was I believe his last name is Fouts. This is bad, I don't remember it, but I think he was at Eastern Oklahoma and then Central Washington. He kind of left
Okay.
Nevada, went to Eastern Oklahoma, Central Washington, and they had the habitat that they built. So instead of, they raised Washoe as what's called a cross fosterling, where Washoe's in the house with them. They would only allow the graduate students to sign to each other in front of Washoe, so that Washoe felt like she was part of the group. And they had some
Hmm.
other chimpanzees too, Dar and Tattoo, and I can't remember all of them, but they had like 8, maybe 6 to 8. And
Hmm.
they raised them in a community where they signed. They had their own little cabins. They would put them to bed at night. They would go wait. So they were just completely interacting with humans all the time. And that's how they learned these signs. And then they put them in a habitat where they were just by themselves and humans would never sign around them. And the gardeners and their team wasn't with them at this time. So it
Right, right.
wasn't
This is
like,
the student of the gardeners, right?
yes. And so
Okay.
his students and those with him
Right.
decided not to. They stood around with clipboards and would just write things down and watch and then leave. And
Okay.
so then they introduced young chimps to this group, and the gardeners chimps taught the young chimps how to sign and would form their hands into the different signs so they would communicate through sign language. But they didn't pass down all 300 signs, 250 to 300 signs. They passed down like 50 or 60 of the most important signs.
I was going to ask, like that, the chimps ostensibly decided what was the most important ones and taught them that?
Or the situation decided. So they learned things like food, this sign for hungry, I'm hungry,
Okay.
for drink. So it was like things that they would be needing most often.
Okay.
Tickle was one of the things they passed down because they loved the tickle game. They would give a sign for tickle, and then the person would have to tickle them. Like you play with a little kid and you tickle them, they go do it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So there was because that's good for bonding and things like that. So so there was some information that was passed down in that way too, but not to the extent of the language that humans
Right.
have. And I think that chimpanzees, like their growth and development in sign language was mirroring or matching infants being raised, deaf infants that are learning sign language, that the way they were learning how to shape their hands, the number of words they were learning was the same for infants and these young chimps up until about age 2. And then the chimps kind of flattened out on what they could learn, how much more they could learn, while the
Right.
infants just kept increasing. So it was like that up to about the age of 2 or 3, I believe.
So as you were describing that, it struck me because words. I mean, I'm fascinated with them because they're so powerful. You already said they set us apart from, everything else really, are these abilities that we have. But then also, I'm struck by, and this is why I'm obsessed with it, is that you said food, right? And even for the chimps or for us, food as a word means something different. Like my brain, when you say food, my brain pictures or has an emotional reaction to something that I would almost guarantee is different than yours.
Yes. Yeah, probably.
And then multiply that by, 8 billion or whatever. Is like words are so powerful, but then also a lot of them are so subjective.
Yes. Yeah. So that's another trait of language and words is words are signifiers for something that they're signifying. So you use a word like food is not the actual food that you eat. When I say food or when I see food written down, I can't eat that. That's just signifying that there might be something to eat. So then the signified is the food. So if there's a steak on my plate and a baked potato, and I say that's food. So when I talk about it, I refer to food, but it's not the food I'm saying. Yeah, it's in your head. So and in my head. So when I talk about food, I'm conjuring up some type of image in my mind and talking about food. And then when you hear that, you're conjuring up an image in your mind about food. So we know that the signifier points towards food, but then I don't know if there's nothing that's signified there. It's our own ideas, and I don't know how well they match. I can't get inside your head to see if when I say food, it's what I'm talking about or not.
So you say, you bring up a steak and a baked potato, and I am not, by the way, but if I'm vegan, I doubt that is going to be my signified. That image is not going to be of a steak,
yes,
right?
If you say food, you mean?
Yeah. If you say food, or you and I together hear the word food, and you're thinking of a juicy piece of meat and a potato, and I don't know what vegans eat, but I'm thinking about whatever. They're completely different, and it's the same word. But I don't know that I've ever heard it described the way that you just did, a signifier and then the signified.
Yeah. Even if I said, hey, Sean, doesn't a steak sound really good right now?
And
Because you're not a vegan. So you're like, yeah. But then in my mind, my steak might be, I like thick steaks, like 2 inches, 1.75 inches, 2 inches. I like them rare, not too bad, but pretty rare, pretty red and juicy. I like the outside burnt. I like just salt and pepper, maybe a little bit of butter on it. So our steaks could be different. And me even describing that, you're probably picturing like something different than
that. Yeah.
So it's just there's no way. So it kind of comes to the idea that there's the kind of the universal truth about something, but you can never get to that universal truth with a word. A
Right.
word just signifies what the truth is, but is not the truth. And so there's kind of like the universal and the particular. We can talk about things generally, but when we get down to particular, something particular, it's really, I don't know what if you're thinking what I'm thinking. So
Yeah.
language is really good and helps us. It creates this kind of shared cognitive space that we can discuss things in this space because we both kind of know what we're talking about when we talk about food or about steak specifically. We can have this shared cognitive space, but I still don't know what your truth is when you think of a steak, and you don't know what my truth is.
Right. And I mean, where we are in this country, at least, I feel like why. So I believe this phrase "words matter" was long before any political divide or whatever. But now I think that words play a huge part in the division in this country,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's right now where I sit today in this space is fascinating to me because, and what you just said is like one word to me helps me kind of take in information about the world, but what's the truth, right? And because
Yeah.
I don't like my truth, but I mean I have my perception of how things happened or are happening, and then there are other people who have a completely different perception based on words that are used that would to describe things.
Yeah. And it kind of comes down to the concept of linguistic relativity. And it's the idea that our words shape our perceptions. So they kind of words carve out our not just to describe what we perceive, but actually help determine what we perceive based on the words that we have or use.
And these words have evolved, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it wasn't like we sat down and had a meeting and said, okay, we're going to change the term from, and I'm going to use some terms that I don't agree with, but again, to make the point is what's an illegal alien
Mm-hmm.
versus, an immigrant or,
Mm-hmm.
and you watch these words, I don't want to say evolve, but I guess they've evolved. But and there's a lot of subjects that are like taboo or a little bit sensitive, and then over time we try to soften those things by the use of different words.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But go
sometimes
ahead.
they're uncomfortable.
Yeah, uncomfortable. Yeah.
So we'll just change how we say it so that it feels more comfortable to talk about.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
a smart bomb or a Patriot missile.
Right.
Those sound better than talking about weapons of destruction. And
Oh, another one. Right. Yeah. That we saw, but then this is just Sean's opinion. This is not speaking for John or for the show. But then we changed the term. But then after time, it seems like the new term picks up the negative connotations of the term we changed.
when you
Do you know
tie
what I
it to
mean?
something that's negative, it
Yeah.
starts to do that. Yeah. No, you're right.
And
At first you say it because it softens it and it feels better to talk about it. But then all of a sudden, when those things get attached really well, where
mhm.
they can't be separated from each other, then all of a sudden that's kind of negative. So you have to start over.
Yeah. And so we're constant. It feels like this loop of changing what we call something, like you said. I love that description of like to soften it to make me feel a little more comfortable with the topic.
Mm-hmm.
And then after time, the negative associations, connotations get associated with that word. So then we like change it again. And some of these words, I feel like because I do it as well, use these terms and words and maybe not forget, but don't even know where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The
Oh
history of
yeah,
a word.
definitely. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then if you're a nerd like me or word obsessed and you start going, where'd that word come from? What's the etymology of this word? And they're all Greek and Latin, but I mean, not like that, but just like, what is that? What does this word mean? And why are we using it? And then I start to look through, where it started and then what it became. When you start to look at words like that, I mean, on one hand, it's interesting, but on the other hand, it's like, how do these things happen? Because like I said, we don't all just sit down at a table and go, we're going to change this word. It just starts changing. And then again, with social media and all this other nonsense we've been talking about, like the lexicon, people start using a new word and don't really know how we got there.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a friend of mine about, so I'll tell you again, just Sean, but I prefer the term houseless when I'm talking about people who don't have a structure to, I don't want to say even reside in, but we've talked about on this show before, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Mm-hmm.
And those needs, I think everybody's probably heard this in one way or another, but shelter is one of those things. And on one of the episodes,
one of the first.
Yeah, you talked about,
yeah.
I think it was on the podcast. Maybe you remember or can correct me, but you've talked about on the hierarchy, like at the top is self-actualization.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But it starts at the base with food, shelter, clothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your physiological needs.
Right.
I want to be safe and have, clothes and shelter to keep me safe, and food so I can survive. It's about survival, really.
Surviving.
At the base level. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, so you take where I'm at, and not everybody's here, houselessness, too woke for people, I guess. But back in the day, oh yeah, we can get into that too. But if you go back in the day, and I don't even know because I wasn't alive then, but in the 50s, 40s, I don't know, but you would call people who didn't have a place to live and were you call them a bum. Everybody called them bums. And then that, I think, turned into like vagrant or these terms. Mm-hmm. And because whether you call it homelessness, houselessness, I don't care what you call it, it ain't new. It's been around a long time.
Yeah. And
we had different words to describe them. But like, again, I don't even know if there's a definition of the word bum. I've never looked it up. If there is, I don't know what it means.
I think that's one of those words most people know what you're talking about. Actually, that has probably changed that meaning. Because now I'm thinking of a bum meaning somebody who doesn't want to work, who just wants to sit around in their house, in their house.
But there was hobo.
Yeah. Hobo.
Right? Like all of these different words to describe someone who, it's funny that you say someone who doesn't want to work. Because even with a houseless person, homeless person, but there's a perception out there that they would prefer to live on the street than have a job and pay a mortgage.
Yeah.
And I've actually heard, that's not social media. I've heard a human being say that to me. And it's not a slight against them. It's just going back to the word bum. It's like, you don't want to work. You don't want to be responsible. You would rather live in a makeshift tent on the side of the freeway than that.
Yeah. I think that like that term to me back in the 1950s meant a person with a stick with something wrapped up. They're walking along the railroad tracks. And now it's somebody just lazing around on their couch, not wanting to work.
Okay.
But the point is, so there we go with the signifier and the signified. So we have labels that might not match. But I think I agree completely with what you're saying. There's been a big push in mental health to stop using terms like this person is autistic, this person is depressed, this person is homeless, because then that becomes a characteristic of the person.
Right.
Like you said, like they're choosing it. Like, yeah, I'd rather just be depressed. And instead talking about a person experiencing these traits. Mm-hmm. So it's a person experiencing depression. And I know you came up with the word, you mentioned woke. A lot of people are pushing back.
John, I didn't come up with that word. Don't accuse
It's your fault. You got together
you said, people. See the power of words? I heard you just say, I created the word woke.
Words matter. Sean came up with that word. That was a good point to be made there. But some people say, say,
Yeah.
no, they're depressed. Why don't you just call them depressed
Right.
without understanding the reason behind it? And so sometimes we change words because they're uncomfortable to say, and other times we can change words to protect people. So
Hmm.
a person experiencing houselessness or homelessness, and I like your definition, by the way, I like your distinction of homeless versus houseless that we can talk about in a second. But saying a person experiencing that protects them a little bit, because a lot of them, I think there's different reasons. Research has shown there's different reasons. Sometimes uh, people with mental illness cannot might struggle to survive on their own, and they end up living outside of a
Hmm.
house. You know, they
Yeah.
end up houseless. And then there's others who have lost their job and don't have anybody to turn to, and are booted out of their dwelling, and now they're trying to figure out how to get back on their feet. And it's hard to maintain a job when you don't have a place to store your belongings and get ready of mornings. If you don't have gas money, it's hard to get to your job. It's hard to look like you should look. And so then you end up losing that job. Now all of a sudden I've lost my income. You know, it's just
Yeah.
really hard to put things back together. And if you would say, oh, you just want to live under a bridge, like, no, that's the last thing I want to do. And it's a kind of a really short walk from being houseless, losing your house because you've lost your job, to then fighting, you know, mental diseases and things like that. It's a really short road to travel. And so people in that situation need to be protected. And it can start with our language, but then there needs to be obviously more to it than that. But that's a great place to start, is how we refer to people like that.
Okay, so I have so many things spinning in my head right now. I'm going to try to be concise. Three things. Number one, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but like signifier, signified, you taught me those today, so I'm going to just keep using them. But no, but when I say the word home to you, what does
Mm-hmm.
that mean to you? Home.
I think that means like warmth and family, and you know, the saying "home is where the heart is."
Hmm.
So
That's a
it's
great,
like
great.
when I have the people I love around me, and we're all
Hmm.
protected, and I'm protecting them. So it doesn't matter. We've had homes in many different places, but those are all homes because our family's there and we're protected, and that's
Right.
how I think of it. What about
Okay.
you?
Pretty similar to what you described, but it's also pretty vague.
Yeah, it
So,
is.
what do you think? What is signified when I say house?
So I look at that more as a structure and a dwelling, something that's built, that stands above, well, maybe not always above ground, but something you can
No.
enter. It's a shelter you can enter.
Okay. So when and this is the long road to say homelessness, because I got to be careful with that. That's my number two that I want to come back to. But
Hmm.
homelessness
Hmm.
to me is an extremely vague term because I don't know what a home is. It means so much different to so many. I feel like when I say house, I love what you said. It's built. It's a
Hmm.
structure that's standing. Like I think when I say house to most people, they picture. I don't care what color it is, how many stories it is. I don't. But I think that we get a little bit closer to it's got walls and a roof, and
Hmm.
it's built.
Yeah.
And so when I say houselessness, this is a person who doesn't have a built structure in which to keep them warm and protect them from the elements.
Yeah. Because the way I described home, you could say somebody who's divorced and their kids have left, they're off on their own, they're living in an apartment someplace, don't have that feeling
They
of
don't have a
home.
home. Yeah,
So
they don't have a
so
home.
they're, yeah, they're homeless in that sense, but they're not
Correct.
houseless. So I was going
Yeah.
to ask you about that, because in a recent episode I said something about people experiencing homelessness, and then you said something about them being unhoused, or they're experiencing houselessness. So I meant
Yeah.
to ask you then what you meant, because I have heard that, and now that you've explained it, I like that. I'm going to start using houseless instead of
So
homeless.
that leads to my number two, though, is this, not a revelation, but something hit me really strongly when we were talking about this that I don't know that I've considered before. And it's about the brain. And so I want to get your take on this. I'm going to try to tie this all together. We only have an hour in the show, but you said, saying that someone's autistic versus someone has autism, or you know what I mean? Like not saying they're a thing, but they're actually experiencing the thing. So now when I'm describing houselessness, they're not a houseless person. They're someone experiencing houselessness.
Yeah, it's not their characteristic.
But the problem, or it maybe, the problem is that my brain, our brain, wants to find shortcuts. Do you see, like me, if I had to operate in the world this way, where I want to actually call things what they are. And so when I'm driving by and I see that person on the side of the street, and I don't say that's a houseless person. I drove by a houseless person, because that's describing them. Instead of saying I drove by a person experiencing houselessness. That's a lot of words.
That's a lot of
That's
words,
a lot of stuff. And my brain just tries to find that shortcut and go, just say they're a houseless person. Everybody knows what it means. Do you see what I mean? Is my brain in this case kind of going against what I'm trying to get across on this show right now?
Well, yeah, your back channel is. I think, weren't you the one that said your back channel is kind of a jerk?
Oh, my back channel is a jerk. There's no kind of.
So saying, oh, there's a homeless person or there's a houseless person is kind of being like that. Then you would expect that out of your back channel. But then we all have on channels where we can make conscious decisions to take the long route. You can learn to take the long route. Like my dad, his pet peeve, for some reason, he taught me, several things, but like no hats in buildings, and you don't walk across grass. You don't park on grass. Like you take sidewalks, and you take your hat off when you walk into buildings. So those were a couple of things. I'm not saying those were like what he focused on all the time. It's just those kind of stood out to me because he taught me that. And after I got married, I pulled up one day in front of their house and I wanted to get off the street. So I just pulled my two right passenger tires up on the yard, and he kind of, he walked out and he stopped and just kind of looked at it for a minute and then walked on without saying anything.
That's the power of no words.
Of no words.
He didn't need any words.
I was like, I know you taught me different. I didn't say it, but I know you taught me different. I made that choice today, but you know what? Next time I probably won't. But I guess getting back to what I was saying is I learned to take the sidewalk, even though it was longer to get around. But it had to be a conscious choice that I made over and over before it kind of became a habit. So it would take effort and willpower to add extra words. And that's what I'm saying for people listening. It is harder. It's harder to think that way. And a lot of people, when you talk about being woke, there's different meanings for that for different people. Some people see it as being woke means fighting injustices, and other people see it as being restrictive and just political correctness. And so it's like,
really interesting for this show, though. What you just said is, I just realized the connection with woke. The people, there are a group of people in the country that see it as a negative term. And that term does mean exactly what we're talking about right now is we're trying to curtail speech.
Yeah.
I'm trying to tell you how to talk, what words you can use, what words you can't use. And so we're back to words again.
Yeah. Which is ironic because the people that feel oppressed are the least oppressed people in our society, are the ones that go, you can't oppress me and make me change what I was like. Wow, that's oppression to you. It's not all these other things that's oppression. It's trying to make you be nice with your words as your oppression. Okay. But yeah, there's some it's liberation, some it's oppression.
It's oppression.
And it's the same word.
Yes.
So same signifier.
Yep. But signified very differently. And again, I don't think anyone would be shocked to hear I don't think woke is a negative thing. If that's, I don't like the term, but I mean, we have to use it because, again, as a signifier, everybody knows what it means, but it means something different to everybody.
So I used to not like the word. I'm not saying that I've evolved further, but I've kind of reframed it in my mind as a term of liberation. And so the more I think
I like
about it,
that.
it's about awareness. Like, I'm aware that words matter. So if that's being like awake or being woke, that
Sure.
to me, that's a positive. So I want to be woke in that sense. And I just think that if we take the time to say things the right way, because words do matter and they do shape our perception, that just if everybody would do just a little bit, it would make everything a lot better. Because if words shape our perceptions, then saying there's a person that's experiencing houselessness subtly, implicitly in our back channel makes us view them a little bit differently than if we say there's a homeless person, because then that sounds like a choice. And you can hear that a lot too. Well, they chose, they made their bed, they need to lie in it, type of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's like they're making choices. They made choices. Like, well, we all have made choices, and there's also circumstances that happen, and there's a lot of things around that. So I would rather give people that benefit of the doubt. I think everybody would be happier and healthier if we would do that.
Oh, so more of my woke BS here, but you just said something that sparked another thought, is the terms that we use over time, that can change the way that we're perceiving people. So I'm training my back channel. So back to I don't think I had a conclusive thought on illegal alien versus immigrant or whatever. But, with everything that's going on in the country with immigration and customs enforcement agents, I feel like, and this again is just my own in my head, but if I call them something that makes them not an American, not legal, all of these terms, then it actually makes it easier for me to mistreat those people.
Absolutely, yes.
Just by the use of words.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt that happens. It allows you to not like them, not like what they're doing, and also mistreat them. So then you can go from a protester to a rioter.
Oh yeah,
And
that's
I don't
another
like
good one.
rioters. Who wants rioters? So now you can change it to where you don't like anybody that's protesting, because you can say they're rioting.
Yes.
And like you said, illegal alien, that has two negatives to it. An alien is very negative, and if they're illegal, that's also negative. And so, immigrants who are here without papers or who overstay, technically they've committed, they're doing something they shouldn't do. So they've committed a crime, if you want to be really technical about it. And so we'll focus on that versus, some people have committed 34 crimes they've been found guilty of.
Oh,
instead of just one. So we can accept 34, but not one, maybe. But the point, they can say, well, everybody who's here without their papers is a criminal.
Yep.
And that's just a way, again, to label them so that it's easier to say than boot them all out without having to consider, some people were brought here when they were 3 and they didn't have a choice. And now they've been raised in this community. I don't want to leave the community I've been living in, when I'm 15, when I've been here for 12 years and I don't know anything else. So yeah, if you can vilify something, then it's easier to discard it or to take action against it or whatever.
Yeah. And then also with that same line of thinking is it can also make me, oh no, I just lost the word, not care about it. It's not ambivalent, but anyway, it can, I'm an American.
It doesn't affect me. So
I'm here. It doesn't affect me. So I can read about all of these people, being deported, not even back to the country where they're from. But I go, hey, they're illegal aliens, or they're, whatever the term is that
Shouldn't
I've
have come
heard
here.
enough and
Mhm.
used. Now I'm just like, it doesn't affect me. I don't care
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, and I also,
Apathy. Sorry, apathetic. That was the
apathy.
word.
Yeah,
That was the word I was
apathetic.
looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I'm in an experience, if I'm experiencing hard times and I'm trying to find food and shelter for my family, and I see that I can get that a little ways from here, and I'm really struggling here, I might try to get that for my family. And
Yeah.
so that, if we would look at things in a different light, I know there has to be laws and there has to be processes. I want all of that, but yeah, it's gotten a little bit out of control, out of hand, I believe,
So you
where we're
used
at.
a term, and has so often sparked another thought, because I've talked a little bit about, I try to follow my interpretation of the Stoic philosophy.
Mhm.
And there's these four pillars of the Stoic philosophy: courage, wisdom, discipline, justice. I have the hardest struggle with justice as a
Mhm.
word, as a concept. The other three, I believe that I have a pretty firm a hold on, but justice is so, it's not vague, but you used it as, I was part of the justice system for 20 some years, and I still don't know what justice really means.
Yeah.
Is like, is it righting a wrong? So does that mean that justice can only exist when there's wrongdoing? These are all the crazy thoughts
Yeah.
that go on in my head. But as a term, justice, I struggle with it a lot,
Yeah.
I'm being honest.
Yeah. So that is a good example of the signifier. The word justice is the signifier, and then what it's signifying is different to different people. And in fact, I can't remember the name of the philosopher, but one philosopher said it's even more frustrating than that, because signifiers may not even point towards the signified, they point towards other signifiers. So if you try to go look a word up, you hear a word and you try to go look it up in the dictionary, there's just more words. So you're
Hmm.
pointing towards, a word points towards more words, and then it
That's
just gets
exactly
more,
what's happened to me.
you never
Yes.
can reach that. This is what this is. And
Yeah.
that can be, I think that's the gap in language and truth. That's the gap. So it's, people talk about that gap between the signifier and the signified, and that's it. You never can really reach that.
Yeah. I want to kind of circle, or not circle, I want to take a right hand turn, but because we haven't gotten to words, I feel like it's not negative, but I'm talking about all the problems with words and people
Mm-hmm.
who use them. But I think I've said this as well, but if I haven't said it on the show before, I love stories. I love telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
I love listening to stories. I love movies. Gosh,
Yeah.
I wish I loved books, but I love stories. And plain and simple, without words, we wouldn't have stories. We wouldn't have the ability to talk about something that happened to us in the past, describe something that's going to happen, right? Like, when I say words matter, I want to talk about I want to bring it back to the power of words,
Mm-hmm.
and how words affect our brain, my brain. Uh,
Yeah. So a word is gives structure and meaning, but it also I think that there's kind of two parts to what you just said. One is that there's words allow for displacement, so you can talk about something that's happened. It's not just about the present. Like if we didn't have language and words, we would be experiencing what we're experiencing right now, and that would basically be it. But words give us the ability to say, when I was 10 years old, this happened to me. And they also give us the ability to say, someday in the future, I want to do this
mhm.
particular thing. Or so they can displace you in time. Words can also displace you spatially in space. So you could say, I can imagine what it would be like sitting on a beach right now. Think of a beach I've been to you can get the sounds, the smells of the water, the salt in the water. And
I just immediately got it. As you said that,
the
I was
warmth of the sun. Yeah.
I was there.
And so
Yeah.
words allowed that to happen in your mind. And without
Mhm.
words, that wouldn't be able to happen. So that's the displacement part. But then it's also the story arc of my life up to this point, and understanding, and the story arc in movies and books. And it allows you to follow things over time. Language has words for time, and allows you to track things over time. So that's the narrative side of it. And when we talk about, I've said this multiple times today, that words help determine our perception. There's a hypothesis that I've mentioned before, but it's been a long time ago. It was way back, I think, when we first started doing this, and I don't remember exactly the context, but talking about the Whorfian hypothesis. And that's the idea that you can only experience something that you have words to describe. Otherwise, you can't experience it. And the original hypothesis was very black and white. There was a separator there, that if you didn't have a word, you couldn't experience it. So people who didn't, there's languages that don't have different words for blue and green. It's the same word that describes the kind of a blueness and a greenness. And so the idea was, well, if you don't have a word that separates blue and green, then you won't be able to tell the difference between blue and green. They'll look the same to you. And that turns out not to be true.
Not to be true.
Yeah, people can
Yeah.
can tell that those are different, even though they use the same word. It's like two shades of blue that I can say those are both blue, but I can see that there's a difference between them. But there's a soft or a weak definition of the Whorfian hypothesis, and that turns out to be true, in that it shapes how we experience our world. So there was a study, I think it was Levinson, but anyway, he did a study with American children and with Aboriginal children, and he had them. So the differences in their word usage is that a certain language, Aboriginal language, has direction words only as coordinate directions, like north, south, east, west. And they don't have left, right, front, back. It's to the west of me, or in front of me is to the north of me, or whatever. So there's no left, right, front, back. It's all north, south, east, west, and those types of words. And so he did a study where he had children sitting at a table, and there was a little, like, toy objects, like maybe a house and let's just say a house and a car. And he put the house down in the middle and the car to the right of the house. And then he would have them look at it, and then he would take those two off and have them spin their chair around and face the other way. And there was a table there, and he would say, place these in the same way they were placed on the last one. And so American children always put the house down and the car to the right of it. But the Aboriginal children would put the house down and the car to the left, because when they first saw it, the car was to the west of the house if I'm facing south, but now that I'm facing north,
it's to the east.
It's to the east of the house. Yeah, so it's how you, and the house and the car, that's not a good example, because you would think, well, there's a garage on one side. So there were objects like rocks and leaves and stuff like that. So the rock and the leaf, one's to the right of the other. But then when I put them around, the leaf was on the west instead of the east. So yeah, it's just different ways, and that shaped their perception and understanding of the relationship between those objects because of the words they had. So that's kind of a soft interpretation.
Right, but if I told one of the Aboriginal children, put the car on the right of the house, or to the right of the house, they wouldn't know what that meant.
Yeah, that's not, their language didn't have
a word for that.
Yeah.
And so I would be speaking a word in a language they didn't understand.
Yes, because
when I just said I'm going to make a right-hand turn, they'd be like, I don't know what that means. If I said I'm going to turn to the east, I'm going to make an east turn. But I mean, to the point again, if they they don't have the word. Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm fascinated by that.
So it changes their perception. And, there's also like the weak hypothesis, the weak side of it, is to say that there's a little bit to this, but not this huge difference. But there are native tribes in Alaska, for example, that have, I don't know the right number, but let's say 12 words for snow, or 20, I think, words for snow. And we have like 4.
For snow.
Like we have snow, sleet, I don't know. That's 2. But is there, there's words for different types of snow. Like the sleet is kind of the hard snow, and then the soft snow. They have 20 different words. And so we might look at it be snowing outside, and they would see it a little bit different than us, because they have words that would mean this type of snow is sticky and will build up, and the other type isn't, and this type of snow will create slick roads and that one won't. And we just see it as snow and then go, ooh, there's ice on the roads, or oh wow, that's really piling up. And so we don't see it in the same way they do, because they have so many words for it. So there's something to that, but words shape our perception on things. And that's why I think, going back to what we were talking about in saying, unhoused or houselessness, a person experiencing houselessness changes your perception compared to that's a homeless person.
Right.
Because now I'm perceiving those two, even if I don't realize it. Now that I know there's that distinction, I can see the difference between the two. And then if I can see that difference, then how it's going to change how I think about them, how I treat them, kind of what I want for them.
I like how I see them, though, is again, because it's easier. I think that in some instances it's easier for me to actually not see them at all, or to see them as more of an object if I say they're a homeless person. And again, going back, like when I say houseless, I think the problem is I consider, and you gave a great description of it, an apartment is a house. It's a structure. If we're saying house is built, structure, all that, then apartment, tiny house, trailer, I mean, maybe not trailer, but again, it's an area that they can go to be out of the elements and yada yada. But if I say that's who they are, that's what they are, they're a homeless person, then it's easier for me to sleep at night. It's easier for me to turn a blind eye. It's easier for me to go, not my problem, as opposed to a little bit more depth, because words do matter. They're experiencing houselessness. They're experiencing a thing that, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, could happen to most of us.
Right.
And I think that might be part of it too, is we don't want to maybe talk about that. We don't want to admit, how hard it would be for something like that to happen to us. And so again, just through the use of words, it's this idea of like, do I really want to sit with this and go, that's a human being who's going through this thing, and is there anything I can do about it? So maybe there isn't. But again, that's a lot of like, I don't maybe want to deal with that. I'd much rather drive by, that person and just kind of go, homeless person,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that is maybe, now that I'm talking it out, like for a lot of us, it's a lot easier to just not deal with it than to have these thoughts easier. And kind of sit with it and just kind of go, I get so lost. I say I have 3 things, and then I just get all over the place. But I was thinking about last thing about words, maybe, but how words and perception. But then there's words that hit my ears. There are words that people hear that they have a visceral reaction to. If anyone's listening, I'm sorry for this, but in my experience, it seems to be the word moist.
I've heard that too.
Have you heard this?
I've heard that people do not like that word. Like that's. Yeah.
So listen, there's do not like it, and then I have seen some people, when they hear the word, physically like get a reaction to it. And maybe it's this idea that I'm so glad, I'm so thankful you started with the signifier or signified thing at the beginning, because I've really globbed onto that. But
Hmm.
I don't know what the word that I don't want to keep using the word, but I don't know what, when that hits your ears and whatever message gets to your brain, I don't know what would be tied to that would make people have a physical, like a visceral reaction to that word.
Yeah.
And that, I don't know that that was a question. Is more of just a what the what what is happening
Yeah.
in the brain.
I've heard people talk about this. Ironically, of all the weird places on a sports radio show, somebody said something about moist, and they go, "Oh, don't ever say that word." And they're like, "What?" And so they were talking about how it made them think of like wet socks on feet, and they were just coming up with all these really, kind of things like, "Ah, that's a little bit disgusting." And they
Yeah,
said
where
every
does
time they,
that come from? Why
I
is that
don't
your
know,
signified or
because
signifier?
I
Signified. Why is that your
that's the
signified?
signifier. Yeah, and the signified would be and it's like, no, you could say this cake is moist because and they're
That's
like,
where I go every
oh, that's
time.
disgusting. Don't ever say it. Don't, if you tell
Oh,
me a cake is moist, I could never eat it because I'm
oh,
thinking of it. So you would think, well, one person has some type of weird connection between where, because our brain tries to create, connections, and it tries to put things together, network things together, and make connections. And so they had some weird thing happen, but it seems to be
I'm
like
saying like it's
fairly
not just
common.
one person. It seems like a common thing. So
Yeah, it seems
when
common.
whenever uh, I find that there's some commonality in this, it's not weird in this. I don't know the right word, but it's not something I experience.
Hmm.
That doesn't make it weird.
No,
It's
me
just
either.
I'm trying to understand why there's a whole group of people who don't know each other. They're not connected,
Hmm.
who have the same reaction to the same word.
Yeah,
And
it's
what
real
is it in
strange.
the brain that they all have in common, or what happened that? And again, I think it's more rhetorical. I know you can't answer it, but I'm fascinated by that part of words too.
Yeah, there's something. So I don't have a brain definition for this, but there's a word called zeitgeist, which is like,
Oh, I've
just
heard
the
it.
times you're in.
Yeah.
So there's some phrases and terms that come along, and for certain periods of time they just mean different things. And it's almost, so now you could blame social media. Like, people maybe started talking about it on social media, and it just kept growing and growing and growing till a lot of people became aware of it. So now a lot of people are saying that. But even before social media, there's just things that kind of, I don't know, there's culturally spread or something. I don't know. I don't understand it fully either, but it seems like there are things like that there are words that become very popular or very unpopular for a certain amount of time, and then that kind of passes. And, so
Hmm.
eventually someday moist will probably come back into to an okay standing in the vocabulary, where right now it's the taboo word to use for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't understand the brain's reason. I don't have a brain reasoning behind that, but
yeah. Interesting. Oh,
yeah.
I don't know that we're ever going to find an answer for that, but you know,
Maybe somebody will research it and find it out.
could you imagine the research, the abstract on why people don't like the word moist? We're going to do research on that. That's hilarious.
Can you imagine paying for the fMRI machine
No,
to measure this for
no.
the hundreds of thousands of dollars that would cost?
That's hilarious. Okay, John, any final thoughts about this topic for you?
Uh, yeah. So when I think about this, and this is my background, but
Hmm.
when we talk about words and we say word, there's another meaning for that for me, because I think back. So I'm thinking about in Scripture. There's in the Gospel of John, in the very first chapter, it starts out, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And the word is capitalized, a capital W. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then it goes on to say, like, all things were created, through the Word. Without the Word, nothing would have been created. And So, and John later says, I mean, John's referring to Jesus. So Jesus was in the beginning with God, but he calls Jesus the Word with a capital W. And so it ties into a lot of what we've been talking about, because when we say that words add structure, it was, in the beginning that and in Genesis it says that God, basically God shouted to create the heaven and earth, let there be light. And so in that sense, it wasn't really describing light. It was using it generatively generating the word for light. And, like the Big Bang and the explosion was in the beginning, that was the word that was spoken, like, let this be. So the word was with God in the beginning. And then when we talk about the story arc, all through the Old Testament, the different prophets and the different things are always pointing towards Jesus, that Jesus will come. And so then that kind of fulfilled that story arc, that narrative. And then I think one of the kind of the part when we're talking about the signifier and the signified, that when the prophets and different people were talking about the word, that's they're signifying what will be. But I said that's the real gap, that those two never meet, this signifier and the signified.
Mm-hmm.
But then John says that the word became flesh, because he was talking about Jesus, and that's the word. When the word became flesh, it became that object, it became that truth. So then Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. He didn't say, I'm going to point you in the right way. He was like, I am. So the signifier, the signifier and the signified kind of collapsed into their, that universal, they collapsed together for
Mm-hmm.
the first time. So to me, it's just another interesting way to look at the idea of words and the meaning behind words and how important words are. And then look at kind of the scriptural definition of word and what the word was, and then how those can fit and tie together. And especially the signifier and the signified. I like those, how those kind of match up into that. So that would be my kind of thought for all of kind of tying together this whole thing about language and words, is bringing that side to it that I find really fascinating.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm, as you may know, not a follower of the Bible, but if you believe in that sort of thing, if Jesus was here and saw a houseless person, kind of get a sense of what he would do with that. So
I know what he said we should do about that.
We should do about it.
So
there you go.
There's Jesus and Jesus's words, Jesus as the word, and then there's people who say that they're following Jesus, who may be, and some may not be following very well. And I'm not one to judge who is and who isn't, but I do know when things don't align with when people are following instructions and those two don't align, then that becomes pretty obvious. So
yes,
yeah.
Okay.
That wasn't a really good way to end it, was it? That was
sure
me
it was.
telling about people who aren't doing the right things, but
No.
we should have ended on a better note.
No, not. I think with it, that was a perfect wrap up to this of like why words matter.
Yeah.
Is so here's what I took from this conversation.
Okay.
Just share it with everybody, but the big things for me. Well, I already said it. Signifier and signified. I've never heard that before, but that is going to be with me for a while. But bigger than that is like I have to constantly monitor what words I'm using, because we're always training our back channel, always, and I have to be careful what I'm putting into my back channel. And that is, I mean, that's bigger than this, but it's what I call things, how I refer to things. And it's a little more work, but stop taking shortcuts to just label things quick and easy.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, signified is, I have to be very descriptive, and it's not just about houselessness, a person experiencing houselessness. It's way bigger than that. I just have to be careful what I call things, and then what I repeatedly call things. And
Yeah.
because that is going into my back channel, it affects so many things.
And shapes your perceptions.
Shapes my perception of things.
The thing I took out of this was your description of the difference between homeless and houseless. To me, that was really a powerful point to it, because I didn't know. I thought those were kind of saying the same things, and now I realize they aren't. So understanding and taking that knowledge now also puts more responsibility on me to be more careful. But I hope it does for everybody. Just like I want to, start thinking about being woke as being aware versus being oppressed, and just start framing things a little bit differently, because then we'll understand our world differently, and we'll probably treat people differently as well.
Oh, if only. If only. That's a great goal, though. Going back to, like, let's just through the use, let's just start small, through the use of words and phrases, calling things what they are, being a little bit more descriptive, hopefully will lead to us maybe treating each other a little bit better.
Yeah, because I can pretty much guarantee, I think that science and how the brain works would say, if you don't change how you talk about people, then you aren't going to treat them differently. So if you say
No.
people are criminals and they're eating pets, then you're not going to treat them nice. So I
No.
think you're right. It has to be, you have to change the words first before the behavior will follow. You can't use the same words and expect the behavior to change. You have to change
Correct.
the words first, and then the behavior will follow.
Correct. Well put. See, now that's how you end the show.
That's a good way to end it. I'm done. I'm out.
Okay.
There's no mic to drop, but
No, but figuratively, I see you doing a mic drop. But thank you, John, for all of that. That was a great conversation. I
Good.
feel like we could have
enjoyed
probably
that.
gotten longer, but that was great.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
For everybody else, still looking for, haven't heard anything in the comments yet, but about this new format. If anybody has thoughts, let us know. Follow us on our socials. If you haven't already, follow, subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. It does help us, believe it or not. So one little small act of kindness for us can lead to bigger things. So until next week, take care of yourself, and we'll see you then.
Sean.